Very good evening to one and all. I hope this time around there is no echo in my voice, or as I say, typically echo in my voice. If you can quickly confirm if everything is working fine, we can get going with our session on DLR life solving based on mathematical reasoning. So, yes, any responses, anyone? If you can hear me properly, we'll be discussing some very interesting sets from the previous year's CAT papers, solving it live together. And the whole purpose of doing it live uh, would be to make sure that we understand the pain points and then try and see if there can be a particular way to overcome some of those pain points that typically we face when we solve any particular DLR set. So I hope everything is working fine. So let's get going with our live session. The topic that we have picked is titled as mathematical reasoning. Now let me give you an overview of what would mathematical reasoning typically involve, and this is the topic from which most number of sets have appeared since CAT 2017 till CAT 2025. So when I say mathematical reasoning, sometimes it is also called as quant based reasoning. Reason being that a lot of times there are concepts of average, mean, median, mode, etc. being used, but the whole idea is to fit in certain numbers. So there will be a certain sum total you will typically get to create a matrix where there'll be rows, columns, and you have to fill in certain values. The values could particularly have some properties like they could be a multiple of some number, they could be in a particular ratio or percentages and stuff like that. So the reason why in CAT preparation solving Sudoku and another interesting puzzle called Kakuro is highly recommended is because of this very topic, mathematical reasoning. So when you look at a typical puzzle like Sudoku, you just have to fill in numbers, right? Same is the case with Kakuro. You'll have to take into account totals as well, and which is where this is very very related to the area of mathematical reasoning. So once you get a hang of things that okay, this is what this particular sub area or topic really deals with, then you can build your skill so that once you come across any such sets while you're practicing back home, whether you're appearing in mocks, and then gradually make sure that once such a similar set appears in the CAT exam, actual CAT exam, you're confident enough in your abilities to figure out one way or the other to deal with it, right? So I'll straight away show you the set, and then I'll want you to pause and observe. See, you can always solve it on your own with your own timer and own set of thinkings. The whole purpose of solving it live is there'll be certain pointers where I'll want you to pause and reflect and tell me what did you think. And I'll do the same as to what is it that one could have thought and what could be the ideal way of thinking when you come across such clues or pointers. So this is the particular set from CAT 2018 slot 1. Simple one paragraph followed by three important conditions or clues. Now I want you to spend at least 30 seconds, try and figure out what this says, and then there are certain questions that I'll want you to think about or answer in your own head. And then try and see what is it that you would have done without those pointers or questions being prompted. And is there a difference? Is there something new that we can learn? And so on. Feel free to share your observations, opinions in the live chat. That is the whole idea. We can discuss it together live. All right, let's move ahead. I'm assuming that you would have read the part of the set, at least the first paragraph. We'll come back to bullet points later if required. So we have 24 people who are part of three committees, which are to look at research, teaching, and administration. Now, believe me, once you read this much, there could be two possible thoughts that might come to your head, which is just on the basis of this, the moment you see three committees, research, teaching, administration, and there are 24 people who would be a part of this, a lot of aspirants would feel that there is a possibility that this is a set based on Venn diagram. Now, how do you decide? And this is a very interesting problem. How do you decide whether I should create a Venn diagram, three circles, research, teaching, administration, put in those values for 24 people, or create a simple table? So, a very important statement comes next, which is no two committees have any members in common, which means even if you draw those circles in Venn diagram, think about it, you will have to create a separate diagram for each of separate circle with each of the three parameters like research, teaching, and administration with nothing in common, so there will be no intersection. If there is no intersection, what is the whole point of creating those circles? Which is where if you are conceptually very strong, which is making sure that you understand the purpose of drawing Venn diagrams. The whole purpose of drawing Venn diagrams, whether 3 parameter, 4 parameter, 2 parameter, is there is some intersection, and we want to look at visually which is the part of intersection across the 2, 3 or 4 sets. Here they have no members in common, which means Venn diagram can be thought of as not something that would be a priority. We could probably try and create a table. Then the next clue says no two committees are of the same size. A very important clue. Now, there are some terminologies that I typically tend to use, and we tend to use it across classes as well. Understand that when you look at this first paragraph, this is called as the mother paragraph or the mother condition or the overall main description of the set. A lot of times students tend to focus on just the extra conditions 1, 2, 3 that are given. We tend to miss out on a lot of interesting information. So we have had so far interesting information about the total people. They don't have any members in common with regards to the three committees, and no two committees are of the same size, which means there will be a different number. This is also a very good hint to point that this could be a set on mathematical reasoning, that you need to fill in different numbers for the total of committees. So total has to be 24, but the three committees will have different members. Each committee further then has three types of people: bureaucrats, educationalists, and politicians, with at least one from each of the three types in each committee. Now, interesting. Once you look at this clue, there are three committees, and in each of these three committees, you have bureaucrats, educationalists, and politicians. The moment you look at this, and typically once you pursue your MBA and beyond, you will realize that there is something called a 2 cross 2 or a 3 cross 3 that is very frequently used. 2 cross 2, 3 cross 3, 4 cross 4. These are general, you can say, jargons used in consulting. What do you mean by 2 cross 2? 2 cross 2 typically means a matrix with 2 rows and 2 columns. A 3 cross 3 would mean what? A matrix with 3 rows and 3 columns. So the moment you look at this data, anybody who has spent sufficient amount of time in consulting will say, okay, it's a 3 cross 3. What is 3 cross 3? You will create three committees and you will create the three divisions in terms of type of people, bureaucrats. So overall, you will therefore have a 3 cross 3 ka grid. So 9 different boxes that you have to fill in numbers, wherein overall you have 24 people who are a part of the different committees. I hope this much is clear. And for me, this is how you learn and build your skills when you're approaching DILR section for CAT. That you learn from clues, you create certain structures and understand based on the clues what kind of a grid would you want. So we have now identified that a grid would be a 3 rows and 3 columns where we'll fit in numbers. And then there are certain extra clues that the number of bureaucrats in research and teaching committees are equal. So we can put those values as equal and then take it from there. So we're going to spend more time on clues later on, but at least the structure is clear. A very important part of your preparation for DLR and a part of your exam taking strategy for DLR is to be very, very particular and observant with regards to questions that you see. If you look at the first question, based on given information, which of the following statements must be false? So definitely it has to be false. It cannot be possibly true. It has to be false across all scenarios, and therefore it is giving you a hint that there could be more than one scenario. So it could be a good hint for you that if you are able to not solve it completely and think of multiple possibilities of scenario, it might be okay because the question has certain extra information. But if you look at question number 2 and 3, what is the number of bureaucrats and what is the number of educationalists, which means at least these two parameters will definitely be known. There is no ambiguity or multiple possibility scenario in these two questions. Finally, which of the following cannot be determined uniquely, which means among the four options, there is at least one option that cannot be determined uniquely, which means there might be a possibility more than one which can happen. So these are the things that you need to keep in mind. Now, in terms of the structure that we typically follow, if you look at this particular set, you will say that this is something, if you have practiced enough, this is something that you have seen before. So based on type of set, this gives you a good idea that you could allocate, let's say, 3 points to this. I'm saying type of set, something that you have practiced earlier. If you feel this is good, you can allocate 3 points. If not, maybe 210. Then you can look at type of conditions. If you are looking at type of conditions, pretty straightforward conditions, not too much confusion with regards to what is given, and some of the conditions are pretty direct, which we call as plug-in conditions. So again, you can allocate 2 to 3 marks or 2 to 3 pointers here. And finally, if you can look at questions whether they are closed or open-ended, so I can always say that at least question 2 and question 3 are closed. There are definite answers for this. So I can allocate 2 pointers here, and if you calculate, this total is around 7 or 8 out of 10. The moment you look at this, you can easily say that this is one of the sets that you must definitely pick. So this much discussion, I hope, should be good enough for us to now move ahead and actually try and solve this particular set. So I'm moving ahead. This is the basic 3 cross 3 that I was talking about. 3 rows into 3 columns. This refers to research, teaching, administration. B refers to bureaucrats, educationalists, and politicians. And we have an extra column and row for the grand total. We'll move ahead with the mother conditions first. 24 people. The moment you look at this, I can say the grand total has to be 24. I hope this much is absolutely clear. No worries here. We also know there is nothing in common, so the grid is as it is. Let's look at the first clue now. The number of bureaucrats in the research and teaching committees are equal. So typically in exam scenario, what will you do when you read this? Bureaucrats, so we are talking of this row, in research and teaching committees are equal, which means if you allocate an X here, there will be an X here as well. Research and teaching bureaucrats are equal. While the number of bureaucrats in the research committee is 75% of the number of bureaucrats in the administration committee. The number of bureaucrats in research, if you look at this number X, this is 75%. What is 75% in fraction? 3 by 4. So this is 3 by 4th of what is there in the administration. So can I say if in administration we had a value of P, then we would have had a value of 3 by 4p. And this is a struggle that as aspirants, as students, if you make, it is okay. You will not always be able to write them in very clean ratios. The moment you do this, then please don't stop here. If you know that administration is P, 75% will be 3/4 of P, then immediately convert it into simpler ratios and say that if you multiply both the values by 4, this 4 would get transferred here and this would become 4p. So 3 by 4 into 4 will become 3p, and this becomes 4p. Because research and teaching values are both x and they are equal, I can say this is also 3p. So in simpler terms, now you can say that this is 3p, this is 3p, this is 4p. So the simpler ratio, I'm going to erase this and rewrite so that it becomes more legible for all of you. But this struggle is okay. If you feel that, I have to be slightly messy, it is okay. There is no harm in being slightly messy. So I can say that if this is 3x, this is 3x, this is 4x, and the total will therefore be 10x. Why? Because 75% of this administration was in research. Now, please don't stop here. before moving on to the next loop, you need to develop your ability to play around with numbers. The moment you do this, they have already given us that each committee has three types of people with at least one from each of the three types, which means we can say in across the 9 boxes or grids that you've created, you will have at least one value everywhere. And therefore, x cannot be equal to 0. Can I say this for sure? Yes. In fact, if I just want to ask and think about it, what could be the minimum value in educationalist total column? We'll say, sir, at least 111 have to be here. So we'll say 3 has to be here. Same is the case with politicians. At least 111 has to be here. So at least minimum 3 has to be here in politicians. If this is the case, then at least 6 of the 24 values will be occupied in second and third row, 3 and 3. Which means the max total that we can have for the first row is only 18. 18 and 3, 21 and 3, 24. This is the max total. X cannot be equal to 0. Can I put x as 1? Yes. If I put x as 1, then this value will be equal to 10. I hope this is clear. So 10 is possible. Can I put x is equal to 2? If I put x is equal to 2, what will happen? This will become 20. 20 and 3, 23 and 3, 26. This will exceed the grand total given, which means I cannot keep x equal to 2 as well. And this is a skill, believe me. If you have been able to solve such a set, I would rate this set as a set somewhere between easy to moderate. But if you still feel that you are getting stuck in such sets, this is the pain point that I've observed to be most critical, that how to think like this. Why did you try x equal to 0? Why did you try x equal to 1? This is something that comes once you've seen such a set. And when you practice more and more such sets, you develop this skill to think like this, and that is all that we can do while we are preparing for CAT. So start thinking in this fashion that, okay, if I've got a ratio, what are the possible values that I could fit in? So I am now 100% sure that definitely the value of x has to be 1. I'll erase this completely because this was just for explaining. Once you get a hang of things, believe me, you'll start doing this in your head that, okay, x, what could be the possible value of x? The possible value of x is 1. So now we know this for sure that 3, 3 and 4 are the corresponding people across RT and A in the row for bureaucrats. We are just done with the first one. Some of you might feel that I'm being very slow, but that is the whole purpose for this particular session. Once you solve it on your own, I'm pretty sure that you can solve it much, much faster. Let's look at the second clue. The number of educationalists in the teaching committee is less than the number of educationalists in the research committee. So we are now given data for the row for educationalists. The number of educationalists in the research committee is the average of the number of educationalists in the other two committees. Okay. So let's allocate some variables. Let's say this is A, this is B, this is C. Bear in mind that we know that the minimum value for ABC is at least 1. Now, if you look at the condition, they are saying number of educationalists in teaching committee, which is this value B. So they are saying this B is less. This B is less than the number of educationalists in the research committee. So B is less than A. And the number of educationalists in research is A. This is nothing but the average of the other two. So average of other two would be A is equal to B plus C by 2. Now, B is less than A. A is the average of other two. By default, can I say A therefore has to be less than C? Average will lie in between the two extreme values. So B is less than A is less than C, and A is equal to B plus C by 2. This is for sure. The moment you get this kind of a clue, again a very important learning, you can make notes, put it in your revision notebook, whatever you have created. The moment you get one value as average of other two, something like this, is always a good idea to write the total as A plus B plus C, because this is the total that you will get here. But because B plus C, if you cross multiply, is nothing but 2A, you can replace this B plus C with 2A, and A plus 2A, this becomes 3A. So directly I can say that this value here will be 3A, which means it will be a multiple of 3. So which means the value can either be 3 or 6 or 9 in the total column. Again, this is the skill that you have to build. Nobody is going to come and whisper in your ears, now do this, do this. This whispering might come if you've done sufficient practice so that your internal voice says, okay, I've got some value as average. There could be a sum total. Let me figure out what could be the possible values of sum total. So A, B, C, total is 3A, multiple of 3, 3, 6, 9, and so on. By stretching this, you can say because the total is 24 and this box will at least have minimum value of 3, 10 and 3, 13. So I'm left with 11. So at most I can have 3, 6, 9. I cannot have 12 as the total because the total row for politicians must have at least minimum 3. So I can reject this. So either it could be 3, 6 or 9. Further, if we move ahead, because we know that B is less than A, less than C, if I allocate a value of 1 to B, minimum value has to be 1, that is given in the condition, at least 1 from each of the 3 types. So then A will be greater than this. A definitely has to be greater than this. So A will be 2. C has to be greater than A. Therefore, this can be 3 just to justify one of the possible values. So if I take just the minimum set of values, 1, 2, 3, the total itself comes out to be 6, which means this cannot be 3. So the total for educationalists cannot be 3. It can be 6 or it could be 9. I hope this much is absolutely clear. So these are the learnings from the second clue. Let's move to the third clue. 60% of the politicians are in the administration committee, 20% are in the teaching committee. So again, as usual, if you take values as 60p, 60x, 60k, something like this, you'll be able to get the ratio. So administration politicians are 60%, in teaching they are 20%. So 60 and 20, it is already 80%. What will be the value left? 20%. That will be in research. So if you simply take the ratio, cancel off this p, you'll cancel 20, 1s are, 1s are, 3s are. So the ratio that you get is 5. Now think about it. If it is 5p, let's say for example, can you have p as 1? Yes. So we can have a possible value as 5. Can you have p as 2? If we have p as 2, just for the sake of understanding, this total will become 10. Now this 10 and this 10 becomes 20. We need to make a total of 24 and we'll be left with only a value of 4 in the second row, which is not possible because the values in second row can only be 6 and 9. Which means, can I know for sure that this value cannot be 10? The row for politicians cannot be 10. Therefore, the value definitely is 5. So I'll erase this and write down 1, 1, 3 and 5 as the final set of values that we typically have got. So this is 1, and this is 3, the grand total being 5. Now we have 10, we have 5, 10 and 5, 15. So 24 minus 15, this 3a has to be equal to 9. It cannot be 6. So let me write 9 here. And because 3a is 9, you can easily calculate the value of a. 3 times of a is 9. A has to be 3. So now we are left with B and C. What could be the possible values for B and C? Remember, B has to be less than A. So look at this particular clue here. B has to be less than A. The value for A is 3. So the value for B has to be less than 3. It could either be 1 or it could be 2. These are the only two possible values. We have to get the grand total sum for the row to be equal to 9. So 3 and 1, this becomes 4. So we can have a value of 5 here so that the total becomes 9. So 3 and 1, 4 and 5, 9. If we take the value here as 2, the corresponding value here will come out to be 4. So we'll have 3 and 2, 5 and 4, 9. So there are two possible cases, that's it, which is only in the row for educationalists, that too for teaching and administration, that either 1, 5 in that particular order will be the values that will come, or 2 and 4 are the corresponding values in that order that will come. And which is why there were two questions that were based on those possibilities. But the middle two questions will definitely be very easy for us to answer. I am pretty sure that there should not be any doubt, but if you feel that there are any questions that you have, please do let me know. Let's move to the questions. So this is the final table that we have got. Let's look at the questions. Based on the given information, which of the following statements must be false? Let's verify each statement one by one. In the administration committee, the number of bureaucrats is equal to the number of educationalists. Bureaucrats, administration is equal to educationalists. Could be true, could be false. We don't know for sure. So this is not our answer because we want an answer that must be false. The size of research committee is less than the size of teaching committee. Size of research committee is 7. Size of teaching is lesser than this. So research is not less than teaching. Teaching is less than research. So this is also not our answer. Then size of, so we want to find which is false. Is this false? Yes, size of research is less than size of teaching. So size of research is more. So this has to be our answer. So sorry, apologies for the same. Size of research committee is less than the size of administration. No, this is true. And option D, in the teaching committee, the number of educationalists. In teaching committee, the number of educationalists is equal to the number of politicians. So teaching educationalists equal to politicians may be true, may not be true. We cannot say anything for sure for option 4. What is the number of bureaucrats in the administration committee? Straightforward question. Bureaucrats in the administration committee, the corresponding answer will be equal to 4. Number of educationalists in research committee. Educationalist in research committee equal to 3. Direct theta based question. 3 would be the answer. Which of the following cannot be determined uniquely based on the given information? Can we calculate total number of educationalists? Total number of educationalists is available. Answer is 9. So this can be determined uniquely. Total number of bureaucrats in the 3 committees. This is also fine. 10. Size of teaching committee. Size of teaching committee is something that we don't know for sure. It could be 5 or 6. Size of research is definitely 7. The correct answer for this question will be option 3, choice C. Dipanshu, how to build this skill? Just right now, I demonstrated that the moment you look at a clue where you're saying that the ratio is 1:1:3, so you'll say 1p, 1p, 3p, total 5p. What could be the possible value of 5p? Try and spend time while you're practicing on trying to fit in certain conditions and constraints or restrictions based on clues. Something that you can do once you come across such sets. There are a lot of sets in practice material on similar themes, a lot of sets in the CAT previous year's questions. Whenever you come across sets that deal with fitting in values, fitting it with ratios, taking a certain percentage, for example, there was a clue on 75%, just try and figure out what could be the ratios. Once you identify ratios, a multiple of those ratios could be possible values. How many of those values can actually satisfy all constraints? So just practice specifically this particular constraint based scenarios and you should be good at it. All right, any other questions, anyone? Thanks Dipanshu for participating. Around 30 odd people watching live. Let's move ahead to the next set. One more set, right, similar to the concepts that we have built so far in mathematical reasoning. Another interesting set should be a lot of learning for all of us. Let's move ahead to the next set now. Again, I'll give you few seconds, 30 seconds. Follow what we learned so far and try and see if you can think of a structure, what should be the values that you should keep in mind, and then take it from there. Yes, Prachi, just to answer your question, how to know which diagram should we use? So because this particular session is for mathematical reasoning, I'll stick to my response with regards to how to figure out if this is for mathematical reasoning. Typically, you will not be required to create any other diagram in mathematical reasoning except a table. You will be given certain values that you need to fit in certain boxes which are a combination of rows and columns. So the moment you see nothing in common, the moment you see direct, discrete, plug-in type data, you should immediately be able to think that, okay, can I represent this in the form of a simple table where I just plug in direct values and there'll be some missing values. So it will be a table with certain values that are available, certain values that I need to fit in, and there'll be some sum total across rows, some value of sum total across columns. The moment you look at conditions where there is nothing in common, the only confusion that can happen with mathematical reasoning sets is that with Venn diagrams, because there'll be 3 sets, 4 sets, A lot of you would be tempted to create a Venn diagram, but Venn diagram necessarily has to be created when there is at least some intersection, something in common. Some people belong to administration, some people belong to teaching, and some people belong to both. This is where Venn diagrams come into picture. Do some people belong to both? Do some people belong to 3 departments? Do some people belong to 4 departments? So when there is overlap of multiple parameters or sets, then we go for Venn diagrams. Otherwise, like in which table? Simple matrix. For most of the mathematical reasoning, table based, filling based values, just need to create a simple table. There will be some rows, some columns. That's it. No complication. All right. I'm assuming some of you would have had the opportunity to go through this set. The conditions in a coaching class, some students register online and some others register offline. Now again, you get two sets, online, offline. If there is a possibility that some people register for both online and offline, the moment you get such a clue, you will create a perfect Venn diagram because there is some common ground, some intersection. But what is the next clue? No student registers for both online and offline. The moment, look at the previous set. This is from CAT 2023 slot 3. The previous set that we solved was from CAT 2018 slot 1. You can find numerous other sets in CAT previous year's paper which are based on mathematical reasoning, and they will invariably, one way or the other, directly or indirectly, will tell you that there is nothing in common, no student registers for both, which means online can move completely separately with offline. Hence, the total registration number is simply the sum of online offline, which means the question itself is telling you create one column for online, create one column for offline, and then create one column for perfect total. The following facts and table pertain to the registration numbers for 5 months, Jan to May of 2023. So there is a table that is given, and what is this table shows? The table shows data for 5 months. The table shows the minimum, maximum, and median registration numbers for these 5 months. So you have got the data minimum, maximum, median for online, offline, as well as total. All right. Now let's spend some time on trying to figure out this one important ambiguity based area in CAT, DILR, and quantitative aptitude both. The moment you look at minimum, for example, online minimum is 40. Does this mean this is unique minimum, or there could be multiple values of 40 but there will be no value less than 40? Listen to my statement again, and this can be a confusion for a lot of aspirants. If you are given this data that the value for online is minimum 40 as the table suggests. So now my question is fairly simple. Is this unique minimum, which means 40 is minimum, all the other values will be greater than 40, maybe 42, maybe 45, but no other value will be 40 because 40 is the minimum. So is it uniquely minimum, or does this mean that I can have, let's say, 3 values of 40 and then have some values 50, 60, 80? So is case 1 valid or is case 2 valid based on the given conditions? So for all practical purposes, understand that whenever you come across the term minimum or maximum, it never means uniquely minimum. So this case 1 is wrong. It only means that the smallest value that you could observe in the entire set is 40. There could be multiple values of 40. In other words, there would be no value which will be lesser than 40. I hope you get my point. There will be no value lesser than 40. There could be 40 multiple times. Then also we'll say, for example, if you are given this data set, and if somebody asks what is the minimum value across the given data set, you'll say, okay, 40 is the minimum value. What is the maximum value across the data set? We'll say 80 is the maximum value. And now we touch upon, so I hope, so please remember this for QA as well as DLR. the moment, even for RCs, you never know, this might be relevant in critical reasoning based questions. Always remember, for minimum, there could be multiple minimum values, but no value would be lesser than that value. Same is the case for maximum. Alright, now let's move to the next part on median. What is median? If you arrange all the values in a particular order, either ascending or descending, then what is the middlemost value? That middlemost value is median. I hope this is clear. If you arrange all the values in ascending or descending order, the middlemost value is the median. So erase everything that we have covered so far. We'll now come to understanding the next set of clues. So the table shows the minimum, the maximum, the median registrations for these 5 months separately for online, offline and total. Alright. The following additional facts are known, and then there are 5 clues in every month. Both online, offline registration numbers were multiples of 10. Okay. In January, the number of offline registrations were twice that of online. Okay. In April, the number of number of online registrations was twice. This is what direct data that you are able to see. Except this table. This table has a lot of direct data, which will not be able to fill across months. But in the clues, there is no direct data. So we go back to our philosophy, type of set. Would you say that this is a type of set that you have seen earlier, mathematical reasoning? So you will say maybe 2 or 3 points you can allocate for this. So 3 points for type of set. What about the type of conditions? Are they plug-in or are they deductive? So if you look at this condition first, this is deductive, multiples of 10. You cannot directly plug in. You know that there are a range of values 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever. Same is the case, registrations were twice of online, offline. Same is the case with third. So multiple conditions are deductive, they are not direct plug-in based conditions. So you will either give a 0 or a 1. I am allocating a 1 pointer here. And then last part, very crucial in deciding whether to pick this set, which is the type of questions. What was the total number of registrations in April? Direct question, closed question. You will not have multiple choices. Number of online, direct, closed question. Which of the following statements can be true? So this is not a direct or a closed question. There could be multiple possibilities. Can be true is not something that we'll prefer as a question. What best can be concluded? There are multiple options. Definitely. So there are 2 questions that are closed-ended. Maybe I'll allocate a 2. So 3 and 1, 4 and 2, 6 is the total that I'm getting. I would therefore rate this set as moderately difficult. It's not like I'm getting 2 or 3 pointers and there is nothing that I can do about this particular set. I'm also not getting an 8 or a 9 where I can say, okay, this seems to be like a cakewalk. There might be a lot of things that might trouble me because the conditions are not very direct. The questions can have multiple possibilities. So I might pick this as my second or third set, but definitely not my first set. The previous set that we discussed probably could be your first set, could be a second set, more often than not. But this particular set may be a second or a third set, definitely not the first set. I'm I'm of this opinion that you'll definitely find a set better than this to be picked as a first set. Now, having understood this, what could be the typical grid structure that we can create so that we can look at conditions and then try and solve? So typical grid structure, as the conditions initially said, we can create a structure, a column for online, offline, total. So we can have a column for online, we can have a column for offline, we can have a column for total. And because we need to find data and the clues are talking of data for months, January to May, we can have rows as Jan, Feb, March and so on till May. And then we can finally have a total separately at the bottom. One important grid structure or way of representation that I strongly recommend the moment you get median or mean is also called as average, and you get a min and a max. Because there are 5 months, Jan, Feb, March, April and May, there are such 5 months. Across each of the totals for online and offline, please create 5 spaces. I'll tell you why. If you create 5 spaces, let's say for online total, so across the column for online, we have 5 spaces. We don't know which month, which particular value corresponds to, but we know that there are 5 months from Jan to May. We know for sure that the minimum value is 40. So can I say the leftmost grid or the leftmost position will have a value of 40? And because I know maximum is 100, I know for sure that the last position will definitely be 100. And because I know the median is 80, for online, the middlemost value will be 80. This much I know for sure, 100%. So creating this 5-space structure across online and offline tremendously helps in identifying possibilities. So as far as I'm concerned, this representation is one of the big takeaways as a learning for you whenever you come across data for minimum, maximum, median. And if I can remember correctly, in the last 9 years, there would be five at least five sets that deal with either min, max, median or min, max, average, or mean instead of mean, median, it would be mode. So there is definitely a set on mode, multiple sets on mean, multiple sets on median. Always a good idea to create a possibility scenario like this. Now, one more important learning after this. We know minimum is 40, median is 80. What could be the possible values if now I take into account the first clue that in every month, both online and offline registrations were multiples of 10. So you will not have values like 41, 42, 47, 58, etc. What values you will have are multiples of 10. Now, can you think of possible values for this space between 40 and 80? A lot of people might commit this mistake because of unique concept being in their head of minimum or maximum, that the value could be 50, 60, 70. But the answer is not just 50, 60, 70. The corresponding possible values could be 40, 50, 60, 70, or even 80. So you could have a possible value of 80 here. So 40, 80, 80, median will still be 80. No issues at all. Similarly, now if I ask you what could be the possible value in between 80 and 100, so 80 and 100 could be any value between 80 and 100. It could be 80, it could be 90, it could be 100. You can have 200s, yes. You could have in between 380s, 40 and 100, yes. So once you develop this level of understanding, it's good time now for us to move ahead and try and look at the conditions and then try and solve the case. Dipanshu, as I said at the start of the set, there are three broad, typically this is something that we study in class as well, type of set, type of conditions, and type of questions. These are the three broad pointers, and on the basis of this, we allocate different points. The two sets, you can watch the video again later on, and you will find that out of three, we allocate type of set, 3 marks to type of conditions, and around 4 marks to type of questions. Out of 10, we allocate a certain number of points and then take a call. If the number is around 7 or more, a doable set, you should pick that set. Less than 7, take a call being the third set, second set, and so on and so forth. In fact, there'll be a video based on this as well that you can watch separately in terms of understanding strategy for DILR. All right, let's move ahead now. So we can create the structure that I had suggested in the discussion so far. Now we move to our clues that are available. The very first thing that I'm going to do is make use of these values 40, 100 and 80 and plug in these values directly. So I know for online the values are minimum 40, median is 80, so middlemost value will be 80 and max will be 100. I'll do the same for offline. So offline minimum is 30, max value is 80 and the median is 50, and the same I'll do for total. So they've given that the minimum total across any of the 5 months is 110, the max total is 130, so this is 130, and the median is 120, so the middlemost value will be 120. So now I can completely ignore this table. So there was one table, one data given. I don't need to worry about that table because I've plugged in all those values in my rough sheet. I hope this is also something that you are able to be mindful of. That a lot of times you have to go to and fro on screen and back your rough sheet screen back to rough sheet. You don't need to worry about this table on the screen at least. Let's look at the clues. In every month, both online offline registrations were multiples of 10. So we'll keep this in our head. No need to write anything anywhere. This is a straightforward clue. All the values are multiples of 10. Next clue. In January, so we are focusing on January, the number of offline registrations was twice that of online registrations. All right. So offline is twice that of online, which means I can say that if this value is x, this value will be 2x, and the grand total of this will be 3x. Now, what was the core learning or takeaway from the first set that we solved? That please don't just write x, 2x, 3x and move on to next clue. Never do that. What is it that you are expected to do? What should be the inner voice whispering in your ear saying, exactly, what could be the possible value of x? Now, the moment you look at what could be the possible value of x, understand that across these 5 rows, the minimum that you can put is 40. So one possible value here could be 40. If this is 40, this will become 80, then this will become 120. Is this a possible value? We can say yes, 40 is available here, 80 is also available here, and 120 as a grand total is available here. It is possible. But the moment you observe this, that 80 is available here as the maximum value at the bottom, which means if I now try the next multiple of 10, if I say no, instead of 40, let's try the value as 50. If x becomes 50, this value becomes 100 and this value becomes 150. Now we don't have 150 available because the max total available is 130. We don't have 100 available because the max offline value that we have available is 80. And now, having seen the previous set, you might say, okay, now this is something that is a good pattern that we have observed. So this is how cat wants to think us. Absolutely. The moment you put in or plug in these clues x, 2x, 3x, don't just stop there. There should be an inner voice speaking to you saying, what could be the possible values, boss? Would it be 40, 80, 50, 100 and so on? So now, just on the basis of thinking uh, a step further, can I say that the corresponding values for January are freezed? It cannot be 50, 100 and 150. It definitely has to be 40, 80 and 120. If this is the case, then I'll just erase this so that it becomes less of a mess and it's easier for you to follow along. So we know this for sure that for offline this value was 80, for online 40 and the grand total is 120. Any questions so far? Is this aligned with you? Perfect. Let's move to the next loop. In April, the number of online registrations was twice that of offline registrations. So let's focus on April then. In April, the number of online was twice. So it should be pretty straightforward. If offline is P, online will be 2P. Again, we'll think of possibilities. So let's think of the possible values for P, 2P and then therefore 3P. What is the minimum value that we have available for P here? The minimum value that we have available is 30. So if this is 30, this will be 60 and the total will be 90. Do we have 90 as a total? No. The minimum total itself is 110. So which means this case is rejected. 30, 60, 90 is not possible. Can we have a value of 40? Let's try it. If this is 40, this will be 80. The total will be 120. 120 is possible? Yes. 40 is possible value here? Yes. Minimum is 30, max is 80, 40 is acceptable. 80 is also acceptable. So 40, 80, 120, this is acceptable. Let's try the next value, 50. If this is 50, this is 100, this is 150. Exactly similar to what happened with the clue in January. 150 is not possible as a total. The max total is 130, which means even this is not possible and therefore there can be no other value greater than 50 possible as well. So which means, can I say for sure that the value for offline in April has to be this value 40 and for online it has to be 80, total being 120. So again, I'll rewrite this so that it looks cleaner and easier for you to understand. In the exam scenario, let it be messy. and there is no pun involved with football here. So you can have this value as 40 and this value as 80. Total will be 120. This much is done. We are done with the third clue. Let's look at the next clue. The number of online registrations in March was the same as number of offline registrations in February. Number of online registrations in March. So let's say this value is K, the number of offline registrations in Feb, both values will be K. Alright, can I figure out something from this K? So far, there will be multiple possibilities. I'll put this on hold. I'll put a question mark in my rough sheet by writing bullet point 4 and question mark, saying I need to go back to fourth clue again. Let's look at clue number 5. The number of online registrations was largest in May. Online, largest value is 100 and this was in May. So we can have multiple hundreds, but 100 out of the many, if there are many hundreds, would definitely be in May. So this is a direct condition called as plug-in condition. So 100 is a value that we can directly plug in online for May. Now, with 100 plugged in, now it's time for us to think and look at the value for offline. What could be the possible values for offline? Can I put a 30 here? If I put a 30 here, 100 plus 30, grand total becomes 130. Now 130 is available, so this is a possible value, but 130 is again the maximum value available here. If 130 is the maximum value available here, can I change this 30 to 40 and say this total can become 140? No, because 140 is not an available option, which means I'm 100% sure that the value here has to be 30 so that the total is 130. So I'll erase this possibility for 40. We know this for sure that the values are 100, 30 and 130. Now, one more thing that we need to do, once we have filled this 30, 40 and 80 in offline, look at this value of 40 which was not available earlier. Can you think of where should this value of 40 go in our structure here? So we already have a 30, we already have a 50, 40 must necessarily go here. Which means what? Which means we are left with one blank value. We are left with, so we have used up 30, we have used up 40, we have used up 80 in 3 of the boxes in offline. Now there are 2 boxes remaining, this one and this one for Feb and March. Now for Feb and March, one of the values will be 50. So this is one of the values, and the other value we know for sure has to be between 50 and 80 only. Why? This we had discussed at the start. If this value has to be identified, it must be greater than or equal to 50 and it must be less than or equal to 80. So can I say this value for K can be any of the values like 50, 60, 70 and 80? Correct? And this, I think, is probably one of the most critical clues in this particular set. Your ability to figure out that this value of K that you see here, this value of K will be anywhere between this range of 50 and 80, and therefore 50, 60, 70, 80, these are the possible values of K. Because the same K has to appear in March, I can say same set of values of 50, 60, 70 and 80 will come here. So there could be 4 possible cases. And sometimes in scenarios you will have 2 or 3 or 4 cases. It is perfectly okay. Let's dig deeper and try and see what could be the possible value for February in online now, because that's the only block that is left, and then we can maybe move on to March offline, the 2 blocks. What could be the possible value here? Now, because we know that the value for K lies between 50 to 80 for March, can I say this empty box will be this value of K? One value between 50 and 80 has to be here, whatever be the value. So understand this properly. Let's suppose this value comes out to be 70. So then if K is 70, K has to come in here between 40 and 80, which means whatever be the value of March has to be between 40 and 80 in our value based column at the end. Now this empty box for February has to have a value between 80 and 100. So can I say this empty space or the empty space for Feb must necessarily have values between 80, 90 or 100? These are the only 3 possible choices. To look again what I've done, I'll erase this and explain this part again. Sometimes it might be difficult for you to catch. We have identified this value of k. This k is here. Why? Because it is a value between 50 and 80, so it has to come between 40 and 80. Now the value for February must be from the value that is missing in our bottom row, that is between 80 and 100. And if that is a value between 80 and 100, I can say this value will either be 80, 90 or 100 because all values are multiples of 10. Now think about it. Let's do the total for February. If I take the minimum value as 80 here, minimum value is 50 here, the total becomes 130. And guess what? We have already identified that 130 is the maximum total that anybody can have. So I have no choice further, no degrees of freedom for values being 90 and 100. For example, if I take this as 90 and take this as 50, the total will become 140. Which means the only conditions that can justify a total of 130 or less are 80 and 50. Fantastic. Believe me, this is difficult. If you feel that you can figure this out on your own while solving, you're already up there expecting a 99 plus percentile in CAT. These are the skills that will eventually help you crack sets. The ability to struggle, to fight, to create possibilities and still be patient and try and figure out, okay, this minimum 80, this minimum 50 can add up to a maximum 130 and therefore there are no other values. Now broadly our set is on the verge of getting solved. I'll erase this part. I am now freezing the values as 80 and 50. So 80 and 50 are done. This value definitely will therefore be 130. And now because this was k, we know the definite value for k is 50. So if k is 50, we can erase the remaining possibilities. So this now definitely is equal to 50 as well, the value for online March, this 50, this 50. Now let's look at the last totals column. We have two values of 120, two values of 130. Let's fill them. Two values of 120, two values of 130. We still have unique 110 total being left that has to come in here in the total for March. If the value of k is 50 for March in online, what should be the value here? 50, and what value should add up to 110? The value will be 60. So 50 and 60, that makes up a total of 110. Now if you look at it, we have been able to solve it completely. What is this value? We have two unique values of 80, so two values of 80. K is exactly 50. We have been able to solve the complete set, all values uniquely determined. But would I rate this set as easy? Not at all. You can try it again. My strong recommendation will be compile all the learnings in your notebook, try and figure out what is it that we need to keep it in our head while solving, what conditions prompt us to decide mathematical reasoning based set, creating simple tables, plugging in values. Solve these two sets again on your own. Try and figure out where is it that you're getting stuck and then apply the same learnings moving ahead to the next set of possible sets. We can now quickly move on to questions. This is the final table at the right hand side top that we have been able to solve. What was the total number of registrations in April? So total registrations in April, you can mark your answer as 120, theta based question. All right. What was the number of online registrations in January? Number of online registrations in January, the number is 40. You can plug in your answer as 40. Which of the following statements can be true? Understand, can be. The number of offline registrations was the smallest in May. Number of offline registrations was smallest in May, 30. Yes, this is true. The total number of registrations was smallest in February. Smallest in March, not in Feb. So this is not true. So only one is the correct answer. What best can be concluded about number of offline registrations in Feb? Offline Feb is 50. So correct answer will be choice D, 50. Which pair of months definitely had the same total number of registrations? Jan and April. So Jan 120, April 120. This is true. Feb and May. Feb is 130, May is 130. This is also true. So we'll say correct answer is choice D, both 1 and 2. So I guess it's close to an hour that we have been together, and this is what I had shared when I gave you the intimation of this live session, that we will solve few sets together with very interesting ways to understand clues, conditions, and then how to approach. I hope and I sincerely hope that you're able to learn and this session has added a lot of value. If you have learned something, please make a note of it somewhere, use it for revision later on, and then try and apply this, which is probably the most important part, in practice whenever you're solving sets, so that you remember these learnings going ahead and eventually develop this skill to be able to get that fantastic percentile in the exam. So I guess that's it from my side. I hope you learned a lot of things, and if you have any suggestions, please share in the comments. What is it that you would want to learn more? What kind of sessions you want in terms of DLR, QA, live sessions, etc. Share your feedback with regards to these sessions that we have conducted so far, and we'll be happy to take it forward from there. That's it from my side. I'll take a leave.